And for more on this, Einar Tangen joins us from Beijing. He is a senior fellow at the Taihe Institute and chairman of Asia Narratives. Einar, thank you so much for joining us. China-U.S. relations are a focal point at Shangri-La. There are obviously key tensions on both sides. How important is it to try and repair the lines of communication between both militaries? Things are obviously quite tense between both sides tied to the South China Sea region.
Yes, Karina. I mean, when the old saying, when elephants fight, the grass gets trampled, this relationship is being dominating this particular set of meetings. Marcos was trying to steal some limelight by playing to a domestic audience, but this is absolutely crucial. I mean, as Lloyd Austin was talking to his counterpart, Dong Jun, the Council for Foreign Relations was preparing a report on how the U.S. can get NATO to be more involved in Asia. So this is a continuing set of problems that's being set up because of the geopolitical contest between these powers.
And Einar, since territorial hostilities with China surged last year in the South China Sea, Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s administration has forged new security alliances with a number of Asian and Western countries and allowed an increased presence of U.S. military on their bases. How much do you think that has escalated tensions in the region?
Well, obviously it has, and it's being seen by Beijing as the typical playbook from the Washington point of view, and that is to get a proxy to take the heat and create some sort of conflict. The danger here is that conflict would not be limited. The United States has a defense treaty with the Philippines. If the Philippines is trying to engineer some sort of incident where it can claim it was attacked, as he said that Philippines will do, quote, whatever it takes, quote, to protect its sovereignty. This is a real danger, and this is where these kinds of dialogues are absolutely essential. The U.S. does not want a war with China. They don't want to be drawn into a war, despite this kind of trying to suppress and contain China and worry it with these kinds of issues, especially with nations like the Philippines.
Yeah, and face-to-face dialogue can only help alleviate some of the pressures that are brewing. Where have China and the U.S. been able to find some common ground militarily? There have been some movement on defense contracts, for example, which broke down after Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan.
Well, that's the whole point. I mean, there was no talking going on, and when there's no talking, especially in the military, there's an assumption that there's, bad actions on both sides, and that, somehow they're maneuvering. So they need to talk to each other, and that's what these dialogues are about. You'll note that when Lloyd Austin left the meeting, the first thing he said is, "It went well," quote. And that's the kind of reaction you want. They've also agreed that they're going to have a strategic crisis group put together on both sides so they can talk about these issues. Unfortunately, you can have as much talk as you want, but if there's this desire or fear, especially on the U.S. side, that China is somehow a threat to it, it's very hard to deal with that over the long term just by talking.
How would you characterize China's broader role at the conference?
Well, China has taken a leading role here, obviously, because of its size, its the number of trade relations that it's had, its relationship with ASEAN, etc. But, the U.S. is trying to find cracks in that particular area, and right now the Philippines appears to be it. We don't know. I mean, the Philippines is a democracy. They can change, and a few years from now you could see somebody who's much more amenable to China based on this idea of economic development. Now, remember, the biggest difference that you'll always see between the Chinese approach and the U.S. approach is the U.S. talks about fear and about the necessity for security arrangements and arms. China is always talking about shared future for mankind, trade, and future development.
Two very different approaches. We will have to leave it there. We're out of time, but thank you so much, Einar Tangen, for your perspective.
Thank you, Karina.